We are about to march into quarter four of the year, and this is extremely important to focus on if you hold any crypto. I don't care if it is Bitcoin, I don't care if it's Ethereum, I don't care if it's XRP. Any crypto that you are holding, you need to lock in on quarter four. The reason why I say this is because of multiple factors. Number one, we just witnessed a major pullback. I would argue that it was a shakeout. We're now witnessing the market bouncing back on the daily, as you guys can see. There's a lot of gains on the daily. Most of these gains are still pretty shallow for the most part. It's not like things are going absolutely crazy and XRP is like going back to $4 plus or anything like that. But this is a very good sign of what's to come. Now, one of the biggest things that I have been focused on is Bitcoin having a strong impulsive move from where it was hovering around yesterday. We are back to almost 112K. We did hit 112K earlier today. On the daily, we're up about 1.9%, nothing too crazy there. Ethereum is up about 2.5%, and then XRP is up about 3.2%. So again, gains here, not crazy. However, we are starting to see a nice reaction. And this is a very good sign of what's to come. When it comes to the entire market of crypto, we could also see the reaction off of the lows. So far, off of our lows, we hit 3.72 trillion. We're back to about 3.86 trillion. So we added well over $100 billion to the market cap of crypto. The fear and greed levels back to about 39. Again, nothing too crazy here. There's not like a huge shift on fear and greed at all. And then also in terms of the altcoin market, RSI is now back to about roughly the middle point. We're at about almost 52 here. So again, very good sign of a nice reaction, not just on Bitcoin, but also across the board. We're starting to see altcoins bouncing back in a big way. Most of the market is now back above some of the previous resistance levels, which is very good to see. In terms of Bitcoin, this is what the last 7 days look like. Right now, in terms of this chart, let's just go and look at the 3-hour real quick on the lower time frame view. So we did hit a high of about roughly 112.4K. We're back down to 111.6K. The level in which we did hit, there's definitely a lot of resistance around this level, even on the lower time frame structure. On the daily, we could also see that there is quite a bit of resistance around this level right before, we started to break out. Now, the good news on Bitcoin is that we have our low down here going back to August. We technically have a higher low in play here. The biggest thing to focus on is taking out these previous highs. If Bitcoin can manage to break back above, this 118K level and create a higher high, that would confirm bullish structure on Bitcoin. That would tell us that Bitcoin is going much higher, and that will tell us that we just witnessed the major bottom on this recent move. So this is a very exciting push so far, and even on the weekly, this is what the weekly looks like for Bitcoin. We did close right around roughly 111.9K. So pretty strong close, I would argue. Pretty decent. And again, even on the higher time frame structure here on the weekly, we do have a higher low in play. So I'm definitely watching this closely throughout the week. I do think that we will see a much larger impulse move during this week as well, especially with stocks opening yet again. And on Friday, stocks did have a pretty good push. This is what the S&P looked like on Friday's close. So we did have a nice push to the downside. Typically, when we have something like this, very similar to this candle going back to September 2nd, we will start to see a big impulse move. And we did close right around 66.43 on Friday. I do think that we are going to continue higher here. I know that we have been in the overbought territory for a bit of time on the S&P. Looking at this a little bit on like the 3-day structure or even on the weekly, you could clearly see that. So although, yes, we could still see a little bit lower price action on the S&P, I do think that we go a little bit higher here this week to really kind of start a much larger impulse in the crypto market as well. But I do think that stocks are going to get a little bit more boring, which will also funnel in a ton of liquidity from stocks into crypto to support Bitcoin's next big move, which should take Bitcoin to 130K plus, and we should start to see altcoins really breaking out as well. Now, talking about that, let's take a quick look at Ethereum. So Ethereum in the last 7 days, also very similar to Bitcoin, did start to have a big shift to the upside. On the lower time frame structure, on like the 3 hour, we could see where we did hit real quick. 1 second, let me zoom in. So we did hit about roughly 41, 43. We tried to flip a support zone on the 3 hour. This is that level of support that we need to really kind of flip. We want to see a big push above this level. So until we actually reclaim this, and it's going to take a little bit of time, let's just be honest here, but until we start to reclaim this, we're probably just going to chop a little bit more. But during this week, we should start to see a much larger push on Ethereum back above 4,200, which will also allow us to start to break back up into some of these supply zones, which would be about roughly 43, 4,400. And that could definitely have us impulsing back to some of these previous highs. In terms of the daily view, so let's just take a quick look at the daily here as well. Now, the difference here on Ethereum compared to Bitcoin is that we don't have a higher low going off of some of these previous lows. We have a higher low structure going off of the August lows. So we have our low back here. Sorry, let me redraw that. We have our low back here in August. Now we have our low here in September. We are still in a higher time frame bullish structure technically, but we still want to see a big break over these highs. So until Ethereum really kind of gets a daily candle close above 47.30, we're not out of the water just yet. But this is a very good sign, and momentum is starting to pick up a bit here. So, we would love to see this just continue throughout the week, which is why, we're just going to continue to lock in on this chart and really kind of pay attention to it. And then, of course, yes, XRP. So with XRP on the 7-day, we are starting to impulse in a big way. And this is off of the major lows that we did recently hit. By the way, talking about the lows, let's take a quick look at the daily. We did find a lot of support right around roughly like $2.74. There's quite a bit of demand around this level. There's a lot of support around this level as well. So makes a lot of sense. But again, very similar to Ethereum, we want to see a big break over these previous highs. So until we start to see a daily candle close over like $3.13, we're not going to celebrate too early here. But the biggest thing to focus on is Q4. Okay, and the reason why is because of how Bitcoin historically performs in Q4. There was a recent video, and it was from Eric Trump, actually. It was an interview with Eric Trump, and this is from NY Next, or New York Next, right? We have Justin. Eric Trump says that he thinks Bitcoin will surpass $1 million, and Q4 of this year will be unbelievable. Now, he doesn't think that Bitcoin's going to break over $1 million in Q4. He just thinks long-term that Bitcoin will break over $1 million, which a lot of people would agree with. The main thing that we're focused on here is how Q4 will look for Bitcoin. Will Q4 be unbelievable? Well, I'm going to go over a lot of information regarding this and really kind of address why I do think that Q4 is going to be extremely, bullish and why we should buckle up for it. But check out this video clip.
And the future is incredible. The future is bright. The future is incredible. And I think Q4 of this year is going to be unbelievable for a host of reasons. So super excited.
How do you think Bitcoin's going to go?
I've always said that I think in time, Bitcoin surpasses $1 million. I think with quantitative easing that we're going to have starting tomorrow when the announcement's made, and all signs point in the right direction, unless this guy's really off his rocker, but then he's going to just get laughed out of this country. But, I think starting tomorrow, you're going to see right drops. You see what's happening with M2, which is, the money supply around the world, which is skyrocketing right now. Q4 has always historically been, the best quarter, generally the best quarter for cryptocurrencies.
And he's not wrong, right? Like if we're looking at the quarterly returns, and by the way, it's not just Bitcoin. That's the thing. Like a lot of people are focused on Bitcoin. Don't get me wrong. Q4 has been very bullish for Bitcoin in bull runs. For an example, back in 2013, in Q4, Bitcoin returned over 400 and almost 80%. In Q4 of 2015, 81+%. In Q4 of 2016, 58+%. In 2017, 215%. 2020, 168%. 2021 was a little bit shallow, 5.45%. And then also 2023, 56 plus percent, almost 57. And then 2024, 47.73%. Now, so far in quarter three, the gains have been pretty shallow. We hit about roughly 4.73%. And a lot of people were wondering, well, is this where we start to see Bitcoin, underperform and possibly even have a red quarter four, very similar to like 2022, 2019, 2018, or 2014? Well, a lot of these time periods were the start of the bear market, or we were getting closer to the bear market. I don't think that quarter four of this year is going to be bad at all. In fact, I think that's going to be very bullish for Bitcoin, especially considering the fact that we just had two very green months, very similar back to like 2017, because a lot of people think that we are in the 2017 time period, essentially where we are following that pattern. Quarter three underperforms quarter two. We got to also realize that yes, Bitcoin is experiencing diminished returns because of how high the price of Bitcoin is. It's not going to have those crazy 400+% moves like we saw in previous quarters, simply because of how expensive Bitcoin is and how high the market cap is. But if we're thinking about this logically, I still think that there is a good chance that we see a, plus 30, plus 40+%, candle on Bitcoin in quarter four. So like 30 to 40% plus would be my bet. We'll have to watch, wait, and see, because again, it's anyone's, guess here. But the biggest thing that I'm focused on is Ethereum, because Ethereum just had a 66% push in quarter three after having a 36% plus push in quarter two. If we're following 2017, right, we should see a extremely bullish quarter four where we potentially see I would argue that we do better than quarter three. I would say like a 120% plus push. And I know that sounds crazy, but we got to think about it like this, right? Ethereum is trading at about roughly $4,100 currently. The all-time high, we did hit an all-time high recently of $49.53. I still don't think that we closed at it, so I'm not going to really count it too much. I would argue that we could see Ethereum close in on $8,000 by the end of this year. And I know that to some people that might sound crazy, but listen, we have witnessed some insane moves around Ethereum and even around this market that completely shocked a lot of people. The reason why I believe that this is possible and this might actually happen is because of what the Fed has been doing. Yes, we are seeing quantitative easing. Yes, we are seeing the M2 supply around the world exploding rapidly. And on top of that, in October, we know that there's an 89.3% chance of another Fed rate cut. And then also in December, a 97.2% chance of an additional rate cut. And we also heard from Scott Bessent that a 100 to 150 BPS rate cut would make sense. Check this out.
Wall Street might do even better if the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates. The president was pretty clear yesterday, put out this comment: Jerome Too Late Powell must now lower the interest rate. Is it reasonable to give them a bit more time to draw conclusions about what's happening here?
Well, I think what we could see is that, first of all, what if the BLS data had been the higher quality and we'd had those numbers, Jonathan? So if we'd seen those numbers in May, in June, I suspect we could have had rate cuts in June and July. So that tells me that there's a very good chance of a 50 basis point rate cut. And I think President Trump is very good at giving these nicknames. And I think the reason that the Jay Powell gets the nickname Too Late is because he wants to go into a series of rate hikes. He's not Alan Greenspan, who was very forward thinking. They try to be more data driven, which I think is a mistake, because I think we are going back into an economy like we had in the 90s. So, it's just very old fashioned thinking, but I do think we could go into a series of rate cuts here, starting with a 50 basis point rate cut in September.
A 50 basis rate cut in September, does that signal that the economy, though, is not doing well?
That signals that there's an adjustment and the rates are too constrictive. If you look at any model, that if you we should probably be 150, 175 basis points lower. So, I think the committee needs to step back. I think probably one of the most politicized governors just went off the board, and that she was very, very political, I believe. And I think that
what did she do that gave you that impression? I'd love to know.
Sorry?
I imagine you're referring to Governor Kugler. What did she do that gave you that impression?
I think there's a lot of inside baseball. And look, Governor Kugler, you read what she was saying when Kamala Harris was running, that we needed rate cuts, we needed this, we got to foam the runway, and then all of a sudden, it was hard to know whether, TDS was a Trump dementia syndrome, or Trump derangement syndrome, or tariff derangement syndrome.
So yeah, I mean, regardless of what we get, we should technically be at roughly 100 or at 150 basis points to end off the year. We just witnessed a 25 BPS cut. So I would argue, give us back-to-back 50 BPS rate cuts to end off the year. If we did see that, that would absolutely be incredible for the entire market. But also it does come with some concern going into 2026. The main thing that we're focused on here is if the Fed is going to continue to cut rates, and we are going to see QE going into quarter four, and if the M2 supply is going to continue to increase, which I believe it will, we should be ending off the year closer to phase 3 and phase 4 on this path going into quarter 1 of 2026, because I do think that we top around quarter 1 of 2026, but we should start to see signs of alt season. And I know that we've been hearing about this for quite some time, but it feels as if the entire environment right now is screaming alt season into the end of the year. Very similar back into like 2017, 2018. I think that we are following that pretty closely. And, if that does come true, it's always the possibility of if it does come true. Quarter 4, Ethereum performs extremely well. Quarter 4, 2017, Bitcoin performs extremely well. But altcoins, that's where we got the historical XRP bull run top, right? Everyone talks about it. We could see a massive push across the board for altcoins. And I do think that that begins going into October. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on, because of more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.